Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning back in. Today I've got a really good jig tip for you guys. You know, jig is one of my absolute ways of fishing. It's a great way to generate bites and a great way to get a big fish. And because of that, it's a great tournament technique, but it's just a super fun way to fish because, you know, the whole key to a jig is it's built to be thrown into places you won't throw other baits. You know, you can put it into a dock, you can put it into log jams, into stumps, into thick weeds. It's really meant to go everywhere. You can fish it on this flat rock banks like I'm fishing right now. I've got a bunch of cruising fish that are kind of getting ready to spawn. They're not on beds yet, but they're running some of these shallow pockets, and a jig is a really good way to cover some water and get some of those fish to strike. But you know, you can look at it and say, I mean, this thing's built for heavy duty. I mean, this is a Dirty Jigs Luke Clawson compact jig, so it's a little smaller, but it's got nice heavy weed guard, good heavy hook on it. So it's just a bait that is meant to go into those places and kind of be, you know, a full contact type bait. One thing first tip I want to give you guys when fishing a jig is when setting the hook, you definitely want to give a good solid full hook set, keep both hands on the rod and reel, and almost snap set it, because what you want to do is get this weed guard to compress. So by, you know, giving a good full, you know, not slack line snap, but a full hook set on it, what you'll do is you'll jam the front of the bait through the fish's mouth, which will then compress the weed guard and get the hook home. If you just kind of give a slow pressure hook set that you know do maybe with like a drop shot or something, what you'll do is you won't just, it'll do one of two things. It'll work the bait out of the fish's mouth without driving the hook home, or you won't drive the bait through the fish's mouth because it is such a big bulky bait, and that fish will keep the bait in its mouth until it opens its mouth, and at that point it just spits the bait out. You know, you thought you drove the hook home, but in reality the fish was just holding it shut. And that happens a lot with spotted bass and smallmouth. They have such powerful small jaws that a lot of times they'll hold that bait in their mouth and you don't actually get the hook home. So you really want to hammer the hook set. The next thing I want to point out is when fishing a jig, you want to make sure you're throwing the right jig for the conditions. So in this case, I'm fishing mostly rock with some scattered pieces of wood mixed in, and because of that, I've chosen this Luke Clawson compact jig because it comes with a parallel hook eye to the point of the hook. So the hook's going this way, line tie's going that way. And what that does is when it hits a rock, that line tie will want to bring the bait up and over the rock, or when it hits a log, the same thing, it'll want to bring it up. If I was throwing a straight eye, which is parallel to the hook shank, so facing forward, when that bait hits, it'll want to go this way or this way. It doesn't necessarily want to come this way. And if it goes this way or this way, the chances of getting snagged is much greater. That would be a much better choice if I was fishing a lake that had a bunch of weed in it, because that straight line tie will separate the weeds and want to come through it, whereas this will want to more grab the weeds and try to come up and over the weeds, which won't work nearly as well. So choose the right jig. The next thing I want to point out is your retrieve. And this is key, guys. This is the main part to this video. When I throw this out, so the first thing I do, I'm gonna let it sit there. Now this is huge in terms of trying to get those fish that are inactive to bite. Most of your bites are gonna come on the initial fall of the bait, especially when fishing very specific targets, like a tree or a stump or a dock. Those are active fish. Those fish are probably going to bite, you know, a jig or a Texas rig, whatever you throw in there. The likelihood that that fish is going to bite is great. I want to target not just the active fish, but the inactive fish. So what's the best way to do that? Well, I've got 2 tips for you when throwing a jig. The first, throw it out, let it hit the bottom, and let it sit there. A lot of times those inactive fish will just kind of mosey on over to the bait and look at it. And that'll do, so 2 things. 1, they may eat it when you're dead sticking it. Or 2 is now you've given them time to come over and look at it, so that when you do move it, that'll generate the strike. If you threw it in there and just started working it back, it would not have gotten that fish's attention. So the number 1 thing is throw it out, let it sit on the bottom for a second or 2. I'm not talking 30 seconds, just give it enough time where a fish can come over and look at it. The next is the majority of anglers fishing a jig will just feather a jig. They throw it out and they go like this. That's great, that's fine, that works. But I don't think that gets the inactive fish to bite. So what do I do instead? I'll drop my line just a little bit so that I've got a bow in the line. Let me position it over here so you can see it. So I'll throw it out. I'll drop the line. I know my bait's on the bottom, and then I'll just give the rod a nice quick pop. But I don't want to create line tension until my rod tip is about halfway through that pop. And the reason for that is that creates an explosion off the bottom. In my opinion, you're trying to mimic one of 2 things, a crawfish or a bluegill. And if you ever seen a crawfish that feels endangered, or like it's in danger or a fish is about to eat it, it'll flip that tail and it'll shoot 1.5 feet, 2 foot every time it flicks that tail. It's not down there feathering over the rocks if it knows that it's got a bass or something down there trying to eat it. So by giving it that quick pop, and when you create that the actual tension and the movement of the bait halfway through your rod, you're at like maximum velocity of your rod stroke, which is going to create that explosion off the bottom. Your jig's going to scoot just like a crayfish, and it's going to leave a little smoke dust just like a crayfish would. So it's great at mimicking that. The other forage base that you're trying to mimic is a bluegill, and a bluegill's the same way. A bluegill will be sitting there motionless, and if something startles it or it wants to get away, it doesn't just swim away. It just like, choop. I mean, it's gone. And that's what generates those strikes out of those inactive fish. If a bass comes over and it looks at it and it's not sure and it explodes off the bottom, they can't help themselves. They have to eat that jig. I mean, it's like they can't even stop themselves. So, you know, those are 2 main keys, guys, when you're fishing a jig, that you can generate strikes from inactive fish. And a jig is such a good replicator of those forage species that it just is one of those things that bass want to eat. Now, you can do this with other baits, but it doesn't quite work as well. You know, if you use a Texas rig or and you're just trying to snap it off the bottom, it definitely still works. But one of the keys with that jig is that skirt, and that skirt, when you give it that pop, it compresses and like opens up on the pause, like after the pause is over, and kind of stops it, and that's much more natural, and it's got the bulk to create that smoke cloud better than any other bait that I know of. So guys, get yourself some jigs, get out and try it. Don't just flip to a dock, you know, or a specific item. Make sure you use it more as a casting bait as well, because it's great at doing that. I mean, I'm out here on Douglas Lake practicing for the Bass Open, and yesterday I had a handful of bites on the jig to start, and then I started giving it that pop, which is like what I love to do. And I think I had like 25-30 bites by the end of the day. I generated a couple of nice strikes, a couple of 4-pound class fish, the kind of fish that I want to see. And I feel like that's because they're so pressured right now that you need to get them to react to your bait. I mean, there are boats in every cove. We got 225 boats out here today. Douglas Lake is not that big, so you got to do something to generate those strikes. And right now I feel like this little pop is a pretty good deal. Now, you know, again, I'm not saying I'm gonna win the tournament, but I saw a little bit better quality and I started getting more bites when I did it. So I'm hopeful that it's gonna produce a little bit better. Anyways, get out, try it. I've got links to the description of this exact bait. This is just a Pit Boss on the back of this Dirty Jigs Blue Clawson Compact. Got descriptions or links to the baits in the description of the video. If you enjoyed it, please share it on your social media pages. Hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, guys. We give out monthly prizes to all the to selected subscribers that win the monthly prizes. So if you subscribe, you get a shot at winning a prize. If you don't subscribe, well, you're missing out on that. But stay tuned, guys. Videos come out every day. I appreciate watching. Hope this was helpful.